So, what was it like the first time I went on site to shadow a CRA? Stay tuned. Hey guys, ECRG here, back with another video. Today we're going to be talking about what it was like the very first time that I went on site. And I gotta tell you, it was very underwhelming, but I'm going to tell you why. A lot of times people say they want to be CRAs. Clinical Research Associate is what that stands for, in case you didn't know that. I know we've got a lot of new listeners listening in, whether you're on the podcast or the YouTube channel. So I may have to explain some of this stuff again. But as always, if you're watching this video and you're new to the channel, I recommend you watch some of the past videos to understand some of the topics and some of the stuff we've already covered on this channel. But of course, things get updated on an ongoing basis. So we may be making some videos we've made in the past, but with some new information. But what was it like the first time I went on site? Well, the first time I had gone on site, I had actually been in the industry a couple years already. I've already had a good amount of experience on both the project management side and the clinical side. But what really made the difference and gave me the highest ROI on site was that clinical experience. So yeah, if you have the opportunity to go on site, no matter what position in clinical research you're in, if you're in the CRO or in the sponsor world, I would definitely take that opportunity if you want to be a CRA, or maybe just to get the information to learn what CRAs do on a day-to-day basis. But if you want to be a CRA, I recommend you take that opportunity. But if you're only allowed to do that opportunity a handful of times, I strongly recommend that you at least have some clinical operations experience before you do that. Because if you don't, you're really not going to understand what's going on. And I experienced this the first time I was doing remote monitoring calls also, that yeah, I could shadow them, I could, look at what they're doing, but I'm not really going to understand what to do until I've actually done it myself. I'm not really going to understand what I'm missing out on until I've done it myself, or I'm not going to really understand what I don't know until I'm doing it myself. And that's the same thing with this on-site monitoring shadowing experience I had. I felt like it was very good because I'm right there in sync with the CRA, because I had been monitoring for 6, 7, 8 months already by the time I went on site. I knew what all the documents were. I knew what the regulatory binder was because A, I had put it together before in my role in project management, but B, all those documents in there are documents that I collect on an ongoing basis for the TMF. So we get on site, and this happened to be for a site that I was not monitoring at the time. It was for another site, just because in order to shadow on site, you have to go to a nearby clinic. And the clinic was the responsibility of another monitoring team, but still on my study. So I was still able to help out and provide information or whatever, because I was a remote CRA on the study. I just wasn't assigned to that particular PI. So that's fine. So we get on site, and the study coordinator brings out all of these binders. And I'm like, wow, what is all this? So they got all types of stuff. They got IP accountability logs. They've got all the documents I've been sending. So monitoring call, confirmation letter, follow-up letters. They got all the inter-monitoring visit confirmation letters. They got all the source data in a big binder by itself. So they got all these different binders that they bring out. And to someone who isn't familiar with all the documents and familiar with all the site stuff, I was really familiar with it because I was already a remote CRA. But for someone who's not familiar with that, I feel like it would be very overwhelming and very confusing, and you really aren't going to get much out of it. And I feel like it'd be really boring to you too. So I strongly recommend that you have some experience before you go on site, particularly in clinical operations. But overall, very good experience. The study staff was very nice. I was used to scheduling time with the study coordinator for calls, like an hour. We said 30 minutes to an hour usually, but they don't do that on site really. And every CRA is going to be different, but they didn't really do that. I was surprised. The study coordinator kind of pops in, every hour or so just to check on the CRA. And this was an interim monitoring visit. So every visit's going to be different, whether you're doing site initiation, whether you're doing closeout, or whether you're doing qualification visits. So every visit's going to be different, but this was an interim monitoring visit. And the study coordinator was just popping in and out from time to time. The CRA would ask her, hey, do you have this document? Hey, do you have these IP accountability logs? Or, hey, can you get IP for this patient so I can do IP accountability? Et cetera, et cetera. So the study coordinator wasn't really there the entire time. They just kind of popped in and out. So I thought that was interesting. Another thing I noticed was the PI conversation. When they sat down with the PI, that literally took 10 minutes. I thought it was going to be a few hours that they'd be talking to the PI. So that was interesting also. And of course, cases may vary depending on the study, the CRA, the PI. A lot of different factors could depend on that. How much, what stage of the trial they're in, what indication, all these different things could factor into that. But I was very shocked. Let's see, what else did I notice? A lot of monitors also kind of just work straight through, depending on how much stuff there is. If there's a lot of action items, a lot of queries, once again, if you don't know what that is, you can watch some of our previous videos on that. But if you're not used to that in clinical research, like if you're not in clinical, you may not understand what action items and queries are, specifically for the clinical operations side of things. So that could make it very difficult for you to understand what's going on site. But once again, me being a remote CRA at the time, I understood what those were because I create those. I issue those myself. So I knew. And that seemed to be the primary purpose of the visit that we had gone on, was to close out those action items and those queries. And, that's fine. That's typically what I do as a remote CRA. And, it was awesome. I felt like my experience as a remote CRA really prepared for me to get the most out of that visit, because the only thing we did not do as remote CRAs was IP accountability, which is basically just counting the number of pills that are left after the patient has taken them for the month. So basically, how many the sponsors sent to the site, and then you subtract out how many the patient took, and then you're left with whatever's left. And that number should be predictable based on how many the patient took a day, was set in the protocol. So if there's a mismatch, then you know that something went wrong. Either they took too many or they took too little, and you document that. If it's even dead on, then everything went well and they took exactly the amount they were supposed to take. So you do that for every patient that's in the study. So that's something we don't do as remote CRAs. And the other thing we don't do is source data verification and source data review. Now, we can't do that as remote CRAs because you've got to be in the office to do that. You've got to be on site to do that. Because study coordinators make mistakes when entering that data into the EDC, the electronic data capture. They make mistakes doing that. Sometimes they lie, so you've got to catch that. And you when you're doing a clinical study, you need that accurate data. That's essentially what the sponsor is paying for, is to have that accurate data. And so that's what the monitor is there for, is to make sure that data is entered accurately and is as accurate as possible for the sponsor. That's why they make the big bucks. So, that's the two things you don't do as a remote monitor. But when you understand that, those things really aren't that difficult. I explained them in like a minute. Basically, when you're source data verifying, all you're doing is looking at the source, which is just going to be pages, like documents, tables of the information, anything from blood pressure, height, weight measurements, whatever it is, toe circumference, all types of body measurements, whatever, waist measurements, whatever the trial is and they're measuring, and you enter that into the electronic data capture. You basically verify that it's there in electronic data capture. Literally, that's it. And there could be a lot of pages that need to be verified by the CRA. Depending on the study, they may want 100% source data verification. Risk-based monitoring should alter that in some degree. Basically, what they're going to be doing with that is this more risky sites. You're going to want to source data, verify more of their data. If a site has proven to be excellent, then you don't need to verify as much of their data, which means you can send the CRA out there a little bit less and less, because most of their data is going to be accurate, and they're going to be using algorithms to decide this. They already do this. It's just part of a monitoring strategy to reduce cost and increase data quality. But that's what you do. That's pretty much what you do on site, as well as action items, queries, which is bread and butter, and source data verification and IP accountability. That's pretty much the most of it. That's pretty much the most of it. And collect documents. Okay, that's what you do on site. And I thought it was a very worthwhile experience. Learn a lot, especially at the time working as a remote CRA. It was good because I was able to understand how I could better work with the CRAs. And basically what I found was you could work better with them by making sure you have good action items, make sure you only raising action items when they need to be raised. Same thing with queries. Make sure you're only raising queries when they need to be raised. Don't over query, and make sure you see queries through to completion. That was a big one. So don't raise queries, have the site answer the query, and don't close it out or requery it. Make sure you see it through to completion. So that was a big thing I learned also. I think all remote CRAs or in-house CRAs should go on site eventually. You could probably get away with it after 2-3 months, after you kind of know what you're doing, and you'd probably get a lot better after going on site a couple times. But I definitely do think that they should go on site, because I think you learn a lot from going on site, better rapport with the site staff, and then you learn how to better work with the CRAs, because we're all a team at the end of the day. The in-house CRAs, the remote CRAs, risk-based monitoring team, data management, CRAs, clinical trial lead, they all work together. And you really want to make sure that you have good cohesion and you understand what the other one does, so you understand your job better and you understand their job better. So that means there's no need to do duplicate jobs. You just want to make sure that everyone on the team is able to do their job and to the best of their ability, so no one's stepping on any other's toes. That's what makes a good team. Let me see what else. Every monitoring visit is going to be slightly different. Sometimes you may have more data to review. You may have more action items. You may have more queries. Other times there's not going to be as much. So you may get to leave early from the site. You may not have to spend all day there. And that's good. That means the data is going to be better. That means everyone's going to be happier if there's less to do. It means you have a really good site, really good study coordinators. So that's pretty solid. So would I recommend going on site? Yeah. Would I recommend people that are afraid to travel and afraid to work hard be CRAs? Absolutely not. The CRA I was working with said, the visit took place on a Friday. So the CRA, I remember this vividly because the CRA I was shadowing said that she would have been working on the weekend also to finish up her reports, because guess what? She's got to travel the next week. So if you have a visit on a Friday, you've got to fill out your reports, your expense reports, etc., so that you have them done by the following week, if that makes sense. She says she doesn't work on the weekends every weekend, but she does work on some weekends sometimes. So you can't be afraid to work hard if you're going to be a CRA. That's part of the reason why you make the big bucks. A lot of my friends do a little bit of work on Sunday that are also CRAs. So it is what it is, guys. Sometimes it's necessary to put in that extra work. But so if you're interested in being a CRA and you're having a hard time getting in clinical research, or maybe you're a study coordinator having a hard time making that jump to the CRO or sponsor space, come be a part of the resume review service, resume review program we've got going on, that we're going to jumpstart your resume and boost you to the top of the pile of recruiters. And we're going to do that by really tightening up your resume, making sure that you've got high yield information on there, and really highlighting your skills that you're going to be able to use in your interview. You're going to be used to catch the recruiter's eyes and ensure that you are able to get into your dream job. So don't let someone that you're working against, don't let one of your competitors be first to be part of our resume review program, because then it's not going to be you in that dream job. It's going to be them. So email us, eliteclinicalgroup@gmail.com, if you're interested in being a part of the resume review program. Email us there your resume. We'll get started. We'll let you know how everything is going to go. And I guarantee that you're going to be very, very happy. And I guarantee you're going to have a much better chance of getting into your dream job in clinical research. So thank you guys for listening. Like, share this video if you're watching on YouTube. Rate the podcast if you're listening. iTunes, Anchor, Android podcast, whatever it is, Stitcher, whatever it is you're listening on, rate the podcast. Appreciate you guys. Take care.